As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
And you're leading us into exactly where I wanted to go next, which is the moral verge of collapse of society, or the presence of collapse. Actually, you mentioned earlier when you were talking about the lack of virile men. The word virtue has the same Latin root, vir, which means manly, powerful, and courageous. And so we're talking about the lack of virility. Is what you've been talking about in the past. Let's shift that to talking about the lack of virtue and how those two are inextricably linked. We certainly have had as part of the sexual revolution, you mentioned contraceptive mentality, just the scourge of pornography and dependence on it, the number one dark industry that really built the internet, they say, from a financial standpoint. Yeah. But it's so corrosive to not only the anybody who participates in it or is related to anyone who participates in it, whether it's the marriage relationships or the family relationships, the role modeling, the thought process. And you mentioned men indulging in their self gratification rather than saying, I laid down my life sacrificially. I know you and I are both Roman Catholic, and the idea of following the one model of Jesus Christ as the ultimate example of manliness, of being able to be a sacrificial servant leader. So what has the sexual revolution, abortion on demand, done to led us to on the precipice of collapse? How does that play together? You were already going into that. I just want to share one anecdote. Was our trip to Washington, D.C. We were standing outside, actually waiting in line to get into the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, and right around the corner from there is the Holocaust Museum. Engraved into the stone wall of the outside of the Holocaust Museum, I don't have the exact quote, but it's something to the extent that the world should never forget, that these atrocities should never happen again. And I thought, how utterly ironic is it that I'm in Washington, D.C. with Obama as president, the most pro-abortion president we've ever had, and then all these litany of Planned Parenthood expose videos that have come out over the past half year showing the butchering and sale of unborn babies' body parts, and then the preborn, and then the legal system, the machinery of the legal system, the Justice Department coming out to prosecute and to criminally prosecute those who are the whistleblowers about the truth. Rather than the atrocity that's going on. The irony just seems inescapable where this leads us to morally. So if you could just address a bit further, where are we at? What would the hallmarks of a society that's in a pre-collapse state, either from history, or what would you see, the writing on the wall that says that the moral fabric of society is broken down, and where do you see that happening in our society?
Absolutely. The failure to reproduce, we've already covered that. I'm glad you brought up pornography. I think probably a lot of people, especially if they're older people, don't understand how pervasive pornography is, and how especially young people today. I just had the opportunity to visit with some young friends. One of them was 14, and he recounted that his friends at school, they all have smartphones, and they sit around all day long and watch pornography on their smartphones. They're 14 years old. And I heard a very, very interesting thing about Japan. So Japan was actually further ahead of us on the pornography curve in terms of usage of it, because, they're a pagan society. At least we were given a few more years by being an intrinsically Christian society. But, in these pagan Asian societies, there was just basically no break to be able to be applied to any of this. And so they're ahead of the curve in terms of pornography usage with us. And do you know what's happening? It's very interesting. Japanese young men have literally exhausted themselves in viewing pornography, and young Japanese are now descending into the ultimate, and I think I'm going to surprise a lot of your listeners by saying this, into the ultimate sexual dysfunction or aberosexual manifestation. And do you know what that is? Do you know what the ultimate aberosexual orientation is? It's not homosexuality. It's not bestiality. It's not necrophilia. It's not pedophilia. It's asexuality. Japanese teenagers have zero interest in sex. And you might say, wow, that's really surprising to hear Anne say that as a proof text of how far gone a civilization is. But if you think about it, it's the truth. Sex is an intrinsically good thing. Sex within marriage, between the husband and the wife, executed in the proper way, okay? So absolutely wonderful thing. It is a gift from God. It actually informs us about certain theological truths and realities, which we won't get into. Sex is a good thing. Of course it is. It's how the species is perpetuated. Of course it's a good thing. The Japanese culture now is so far gone that they're completely rejecting it altogether, and they are asexual, the ultimate aberosexual manifestation. And I just thought that was fascinating. We're actually seeing it now. And so in the United States and in Europe and so forth, by viewing pornography, what it does is it fast tracks people into becoming diabolical narcissists. It turns a person completely in on themselves, and it makes them incapable of loving another human being. All they do now is that they're engaging in these masturbatory acts with something that is just a two-dimensional object on a screen that they never have to engage with, they never have to love, they never have to sacrifice for, as you said. Well, what you're doing is you're just creating an entire culture of pathological, diabolical narcissists. And what is derivative from diabolical narcissism is all forms of aberosexuality. People have been asking me for years, what is the deal with, for example, the obvious question is with homosexuality? Where does this come from? They keep saying they're born that way, it's genetic. No, that's a complete and total lie. Completely disproven. That is an absolute lie. All aberosexual behavior is derivative of diabolical narcissism. The incapacity, I shouldn't say the incapacity, the unwillingness to love. And that just absolutely perverts the sexuality in the psyche. Okay? So you get into, and we're seeing this with kids these days now, what is the form of rebellion? The form of rebellion is homosexuality. It's bisexuality. It's transvestitism. We see, what's that little punk's name? Will Smith's son, Jaden Smith, this absolutely insufferable, narcissistic 16, 17-year-old kid who is now the model for one of the Italian fashion designers' female fashion line is Will Smith's son, Jaden, this insufferable narcissist, because you have to keep twisting and contorting and perverting the sexuality, the further you descend into narcissism. Another massive proof text for this is Islam, which is the ultimate creator of diabolical narcissists on the planet. Those people are all completely cacked. They're insane. They're completely self-absorbed, diabolically incapable of love. And so look at the sexuality, as I have an entire video series about this, within the Muslim world. Where does all of this come from? These people are incapable of love. All they're capable of is anger, hatred, jealousy, and fear. If all you are emotionally capable of is anger, hatred, jealousy, and fear, you're going to be homosexual, you're going to be a pedophile, you're going to be screwing goats, you're going to be screwing dead bodies, and if you do have sex with a woman, it's going to be horrific, brutal, despicable, unloving, violent, yada, yada, yada. You look at the Islamic culture, and it is Diabolical narcissism as manifested in sexuality par excellence. There it is. That's where you end up. You end up going from goat to dead body to 3-year-old boy. And so, yeah, what are we moving into now in the U.S.? The absolute glorification of transvestitism, the worshiping of Bruce Jenner as a cultural hero. Bruce Jenner should be institutionalized. He should be in a mental hospital for his own protection so that he doesn't mutilate his own body and continue on this path of suicidal insanity. Suicidal insanity. And if his family loved him, which they clearly don't, because they're all pathological narcissists too, they would go to a judge, they would go to a court, and in a sane society, 100 years ago, this is what would have happened. The family would have gone to the court and would have gotten the guy a legal order to put the guy in the nut house where he belongs.
And as you pointed out, that the fact that this gets glamorized and held up as a role model by popular media, by entertainment, by the culture, absolutely distorts and twists the impressionable and formative minds of children. And that's another one of the hallmarks. It seems like not only are killing and dismembering our preborn children, but trespassing on and violating the innocence of children through being indoctrinated in public schools and others. You mentioned these sexual aberrations, for example, aren't content to be behind closed doors in privacy or whatever and just leave us alone. It's the culture has insisted on teaching as normal, teaching as good, teaching as virtuous, this to younger and younger and younger ages of children. We were visiting our grandchildren, and son-in-law innocently brought home a stack of books from the public library, well, one of which I said, yeah, you might not want to have this one involved, is about this little raccoon child, a character, a little young girl who was very concerned because her uncle was marrying, and she was so excited he's going to get married, but then he found out he's marrying another male, and she was very concerned. But the family came to her aid and helped her understand, helped her through this difficulty she was having, so she could be happy for her uncle and realize this is a good thing. But it goes way beyond that in terms of explicit teaching to young innocent children about these practices that completely distort the proper exercise of the sexual faculties.
Exactly. And they go after children specifically because the younger you get a human soul into this paradigm of diabolical narcissism, the harder it is to get them back out of it to the point where it becomes almost impossible without supernatural intervention. Now, for example, adults who descend into this as a defense mechanism, like, for example, as we were talking earlier, when they're exposed to the horrors of war, for example. Those people, because they were traumatized as adults, oftentimes, if they have a culture that's willing to help them back out of it, they can rationalize and think their way through it and think their way back out of it. If you get them when they're young, and you get these psychological patterns and these psychological milieus embedded in people when they are prepubescent children, it's almost impossible to get them out. The other point, and I'm glad you brought it up, is this thing about all of these homosexuals and aberosexuals not simply being content to stay behind closed doors and so on and so forth, which is what they were saying, if you all remember, 25 years ago. Oh, we don't have any interest in imposing any of this on anyone. You think we want to have homosexual marriage? You're crazy. That's not what it's about at all. Bull. That's a lie. This is the progression that they want. It starts with tolerance. The next step it goes to is support. And then the next step it goes to it's tolerance, ratification, support, and then do you know what the final step is? And they demand, and they won't stop until they have this. And this is what's really terrifying. The final step is participation. It's not enough for you to merely tolerate them. It's not enough for you to merely ratify through law that this is all okay. That's not enough. It's not okay for you to even support them, merely support them. You have to participate in it. This is the proof that it is diabolical. The interest here is in destroying human souls. It's in destroying souls. They want your children. They want your children to be a barosexual. They want them to be gay. They want them to be trans. They want them to be any sort of sexual deviant pervert that is even possible within the realm of human experience. That's what they want. This is why they're going after, for example, the bakers who decline to make the sodomite cake for the sodomite faux marriage, aping the sacrament. And all the people did was simply decline. No, but you can go over to this bakery and I'm sure they'll do it for you. Those people had to be destroyed. They had to be utterly, completely destroyed, because either you will participate in this, you will participate in our aping of the sacrament of marriage, you will participate in the glorification of anal sodomy, you will participate, or else we will destroy you. We will seize your bank account, we will shut you down so that you can't do business. We will sick the government on you, and we will pound you and pound you and pound you until you cannot function as human beings. And it will get to the point, it is coming sooner than any of us can probably imagine, where they will start imprisoning people, and then eventually they will start executing people. You say, oh no, that's not possible. You're talking crazy French Revolution stuff. When they know that they have critical mass and that they can start imprisoning and executing people, they are so bloodthirsty, they're ready right now. Many of them would happily, set up the guillotine and start chopping heads off right now. I was considering at one point invading one of them and saying, you know what? Let's do this. Let's pick a place, let's pick a time, and you set up a gallows. And I will show up, and you can say, Ann Barnhardt, I give you the choice right now. Either declare that Bruce Jenner is a woman, or we will hang you. And watch what I do. Let's just cut the crap. Let's just skip all of the foreplay here. Let's just get to the big show. You want to start killing us if we don't capitulate to your demonic agenda. You want to kill us if we don't agree to go happily skipping into hell with you. Well, put your money where your mouth is. Build a gallows, erect it, call press, have everybody there with all of their cameras on their phones rolling. I will walk up happily the gallows. Give me the ultimatum. Say Bruce Jenner is a woman, or hang. Well, I hope you have a good stretch of rope, because you're going to need it.
And in the past, whenever we've taken that step of trying to press the issue and bring it to its logical conclusion, the usual retreat on the part of these moral perpetrators that are trying to transform the hearts and minds of our country and our children is to say, oh, you're being ridiculous. You reach a point, you start on this path where you're being annoying, and then you reach a point where you press it to its logical conclusion, and then you get told, oh, you're being ridiculous. But you wait about a year, and the next 3 steps that you had walked in that walk have already been covered. That ground has been covered. And people say, oh, slippery slope is a fallacy and everything. It's like that it's uncontradicted in the actual way that this plays out and the progression that we're facing. So before we leave, we've got to discuss, we're made as humans. We have free will. We do not need to capitulate. We do not need to cooperate. We do not need to participate in this, whether it's economic, military, political, or moral decay that's bringing our culture to the verge of collapse. What are the simplest guiding principles that people can cling to and to awaken from that crowd momentum, all the lemmings going off the cliff or whatever, what can an individual responsible parent or homeowner do to awaken themselves and to realize, I will not cooperate with, no longer will I be part of pushing ourselves further to the brink, and in fact, knowing that that's the direction things are going. What is just one or two things that people must resolve in their own fiber of being a person who has free will to do the right thing?
It's very, very simple. It is the great commandment. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart and all of your soul and all of your being. And everything flows out of that. He is truth. He is love. He is goodness. He is beauty. He is justice. He is mercy, among many, many, many other attributes. When we die, we will either achieve the beatific vision and indwell inside the triune Godhead for all eternity, enjoying the beatific vision, or we will not. We will not be with God. And what that is called is hell. And we will be in hell for all eternity. All eternity. Can you imagine the first, as Father Zulsdorf, this is Father Zulsdorf's meme, and it's extremely instructive. Can you imagine the first 30 seconds after you have just completed your particular judgment and it didn't go well, and you are in hell, and you flash into consciousness and you realize where you are. You realize that you will be there for all eternity, that you will never see God, ever. And then it would have been so simple for you to achieve the beatific vision. And you screwed it all up. And there's no going back, and there's no fixing it. It's eternity. It will never end. And this is another thing that I've told people to kind of clarify hell and all this, because it's very confusing. People are confused as to why it is that the demons are permitted to torture and taunt and hurt people who are in hell. Do you know why God permits that? Do you think it's because God is sadistic and he doesn't love us? No, it's exactly the opposite. He permits the demons to torture people in hell as a distraction from the greater torment of them having to spend all of eternity thinking about the fact that they will never see God, and it all would have been so simple. So simple. If you think about that and you put that as your highest priority, not keeping your job, not keeping your 4,000 square foot house, not even keeping your life here on earth, not even, well, I have to live to be 95. Why? Why do you have to live to be 95? Is that the greater good? Are you sure? Maybe you're supposed to stand up and fight and die. Think about all the men who just marched off to war, including men with women and children, with wives and children, who said, okay, we can't stand for this. We have to go fight in this war now. And they marched off to die, and they knew that they would almost certainly never come home. But that was the greater good. That was the greater good. And they also knew that when they died, the consequences of how they lived their life would be forever. Your job is not forever. Your mortgage is not forever. Your house is not forever. None of this is forever. We are completely disconnected from this thought process. And now you've got it to the point where most even confessing Christians and confessing Catholics will tell you to your face they do not believe in hell. They don't believe in the devil or demons or anything like that. They just think, worst case scenario, when I die, it'll be lights out, I'll be snuffed out of existence. And sadly, we even now have the Pope spewing that heresy, which is just It's just mind-boggling. Again, another indicator that things are really, really screwed up, and we're probably on a path to a major, major civilizational collapse when you have the Pope preaching soul annihilation, which completely removes anyone from thinking about God and what their true ends are and the consequences to these decisions. All I can say, preach hell, think about hell, how you don't want to go there, how you really, really want to go to heaven, and how that oftentimes in this life, as our Lord says, requires taking up your cross, which means suffering, and suffering intensely, and sometimes suffering unto unnatural death in this world. But your priority must be that you achieve the beatific vision, and that also, if you were a parent, that your children achieve the beatific vision. Not that your children have the latest electronic device, not that they each have their own bedroom with a private bathroom, not that your children are able to go to some godforsaken Ivy League college where they can be turned into diabolical narcissists if they aren't already. No. Your priority needs to be getting yourself, the people you love, and as many other people, even if they're complete strangers, as in the case of people like you and I, who have, a public voice and a public persona and are able to speak to people that we will never, ever meet in this world. What is your concern? My concern is people getting to heaven and not hell, keeping people out of hell. And if there are people listening who are saying, I don't even know how to begin, I don't even know how to start praying, here's how you start praying. You can say, God, I don't want to go to hell. That's it. God, I don't want to go to hell. And just keep saying that over and over again throughout the day. God, I don't want to go to hell. And you know what? He's going to answer your prayer, and he's going to give you the graces necessary. He has been all along, but he will really start giving you the graces necessary to answer that prayer for you. Every single human being is given the grace sufficient to achieve the beatific vision. If you are now consciously engaging this and saying, God, I don't want to go to hell, even if you have no idea what to believe, even if your conception of God is confused and muddled and you don't even know exactly what you mean when you say the word God. He does. He knows who he is. He knows who you're trying to talk to and who you're trying to find. Just say, God, I don't want to go to hell. And then through your life, I'm confident that he will give you the graces to find what you need so that you can achieve, hopefully, the beatific vision and be saved.
Well, on that note, I'm thinking to myself that you've raised our mission statement of our channel about preparedness to an entirely different plane. We've talked so much with so many of our guests about physical, material, and social preparedness, but you're talking about preparedness for eternity. And I know that you, as a speaker, an individual, bringing out your message and to people have always been a source of controversy. People tend to, I mentioned this in the past, tend not to be lukewarm. They're either hot or cold. And hopefully that the people who may be in the lukewarm state have been given some real serious food for thought. And I know this always generates lively discussions and follow-ups. And just grateful for you being here on Reluctant Preppers, realizing that many people are looking for what can they do as an individual, knowing that their calling is not to follow along like sheep in the destructive path that we're being led and near the edge of collapse. And we just are so grateful that you joined us here again on Reluctant Preppers.
Oh, thank you for having me, and God bless you, and God bless all of your listeners, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Thank you very much, Ann.
Thank you.